I love Jesus. What a kind man. I want to speak to you today about truth, spiritual truth and worldly truth, and how they meet in Jesus and his message to us today. We see it first in the reading from, I say Habakkuk. I've heard it 3 different ways today, but I say Habakkuk. Who knows how to say it? It rhymes with prayer book, though. That's why I say Habakkuk in the prayer book. Where the prophet, along with every psalmist who's ever written prayers to God, cries out and says, "How long must I turn on the nightly news and hear of destruction and violence? When is it going to end? Why is justice perverted? God, you are the God of justice, so I'm going to stand here and wait until you, who have promised me justice, tell me what's going on." And God replies, "Good. Stand and wait. I will not tarry. It is coming. Look at the proud. Look how they pervert justice. But the righteous, they're made righteous by their faith." It's the kind of faith that waits for God to bring about justice. But what I want to show you today is that that faith also causes us to be voices of justice and enactors of justice. So our faith is in spiritual truths. Here are the spiritual truths that we believe in. We believe that there is a God, first of all, that God is, and then that God created and continues to create the universe from which we all benefit, all of creation. We believe that God is a God of love and mercy and justice, and God promises to that every time God speaks through a prophet, through a dream, through Jesus. And we Christians further believe that Jesus is the perfect revelation of God, that he was and is God walking on earth, and so the words coming out of his mouth are the words of God, and the actions are the actions of God. And he is the one who proves for us definitively at Easter that when there is a major perversion of justice, that when a man is unjustly accused and unjustly executed for a crime he never committed, he rises from the dead to say, "You have not vanquished God. I have vanquished death." Everything Jesus said he was going to do, he does. That's how we know he is God. So that we have faith in those things. They are spiritual truths. We don't prove them the way we prove historical truths or scientific or mathematical truths, but they are true nonetheless because thousands of years of Holy Scriptures say it, and thousands, millennia of believers have believed the same thing and have found it life-giving to believe these things, that they actually discover in their own lives and in the lives of history that the promises of God come to be true. It's just that one has to wait. One has to wait. How unfortunate. The interesting thing is that truth is the foundation of justice. All justice, requires both spiritual truth through ethical practices and worldly truth, that we tell the truth to one another. That is why one of the 10 Commandments, number 9, if you're in our camp of Christianity, says, "You shall not bear false witness to your neighbor. You shall not tell lies about your neighbor. You shall not falsely accuse your neighbor. You shall not lie to your neighbor." And the language is intentionally legal. Think about it. In our own justice system, every time somebody gets up to bear witness, we make them promise, "Will you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God." I don't know whether they've removed the God language in courts now, but it used to say, "So help you God." And the fact is, if somebody lies in court, they can go to jail. Now, they can be unkind in court, they can be cruel in court, they can disrespect the court, but the one thing you can't do that is illegal is to lie in court. That's how important it is. Without honesty, without worldly truth, our telling the truth about what happened, there is no justice in the world. There will always be God's justice in the world eventually, but the perverted justice that Habakkuk writes about is his frustration with broken processes that lead to destruction and violence, unfairness. I mean, how many of you have asked yourselves, why isn't that person in jail yet? Why hasn't that person been arrested? Or why did the innocent person go to jail? Or it could be happening at school. Why does the mean person get elected school president and the really nice person with a lot of great ideas not get elected school president? There's injustice at every level of human life. I mean, look at any sibling. Why did he get a bigger piece of chocolate cake than I did? Injustice everywhere. And there is something in us as lovers of God, as the beloved of God, that makes us cry out the way that prophet does for justice. What I find interesting is that when spiritual truth causes worldly truth to occur and for justice to happen in the actions of a simple human being. Look at Zacchaeus, short man. Remember the psalmist today says, I am small and of no account. Well, Zacchaeus was small and of no account to his society because he was a tax collector, and that was the worst thing to be in Jewish society. He was a Jewish man who was colluding with the Roman Empire to extort money from people for the empire, and then, like other tax collectors, skimming off the top, saying, and you're going to pay me 10 extra drachmas, or whatever it was, whatever their money was at the time. So he'd done bad things. And yet, clearly, we don't see this part of the story, but clearly the Spirit has somehow informed him that Jesus is the Lord, because he's racing ahead to try to get a sight of Jesus and climbs up a tree. He's so anxious and eager to see Jesus. And Jesus sees him above all the other people and says, Zacchaeus, I need to go to your house today. Now, you might think that's Jesus begging for a dinner, but actually, Jesus was conveying a great honor upon a man who was the most dishonorable among them. That's why the people grumble and say, he's eating at the house of a sinner. Why'd he go there? Why didn't he go to Elon Musk's house? That would have been better. But look what happens as a result of Jesus saying, let me into your home. He says, Lord, I'm going to give half of what I have to the poor. That might be his legitimate gains. And then he says, if I've defrauded anybody, I'm returning it and 4 times more. In other words, he's atoning for what he's done. It's his own faith that leads him to tell the factual, legal truth about what he has done and to bring about justice. The odd thing is he does it to himself. That's rarely the case, right? It's usually the police or the courts that have to bring justice about. But in this case, he tells the truth about himself. His spiritual truth leads him to tell worldly truth and to bring justice about. We do have to pray and wait for large changes to happen in society, but certainly the events of the past few days have made me reflect upon what we can do, we who are small and of no account. And I'm thinking in particular of the role that we could have in combating something as pernicious as anti-Semitism. It is said that the man who attacked Paul Pelosi was putting anti-Semitic things on his blog. He appears to be unwell mentally. And it was also said that after Mr. Musk purchased Twitter and had intimated that he might remove some of the controls about what's said there, that like 9 times more anti-Semitic statements were being posted on Twitter in the past few days. This has been reported by the Anti-Defamation League. This is deeply troubling. And what's further troubling to us Christians of goodwill is that it was the Christian church millennia ago that started the lies that feed anti-Semitism, that has led to pogroms and holocausts and a variety of things that has caused tremendous harm to the Jewish people. It's a spiritual truth in their scriptures that God says, remain faithful to me, Israel. Worship me the way I told you to, and you will be my people. And then Jesus came and said, I'm telling you that you are saved. And a group of us said, we follow you as the Messiah. But there's another group of holy people who have a covenant with God. And for whatever reason, people in the early centuries of the church decided to name Jews as not beloved of God and to cause evil things to happen to them. One thing that we can do is combat it wherever we see it, because we're Christian, especially because we're Christian. They need us as allies, and we have been allies in the past. I'll give you an example. The Jewish Community Center across the street, our neighbor, was receiving bomb threats in 2017 and 2018, and we are the emergency evacuation site for their preschool. And we called them and their executive director and said, we are praying for you. We will help to protect you in any way we can. And of course, we'll take your kids if you need to send them over here. They knew that we had our back. When there was a shooting at the synagogue in Poway, Congregation Beth Israel, which is a large house of worship, if I can orient myself, is it over there? Yes, over this way. I've never, with all this round church, it's a little bit hard to tell where I am. A very large synagogue held a public prayer meeting, and we were invited, and I was so proud because Good Sam sent a very long row of people to be their visible allies, to speak out and to say, we are with you. We don't want to perpetuate this hatred and this injustice. It can often seem like you're trying to fight a wildfire. And while we can't fight all the wildfires in the world, we can stamp out what we see. All of us know that if you're, walking along a forest path and you see a little bit of smoke coming up from leaves, that you have to stamp it out right away. And you won't get every forest fire or wildfire that's starting, but you'll get some of them. I had a personal experience of this many years ago when I was at the house of a dear friend, a longtime friend, and it was New Year's Eve, and she and her husband and another couple, and then a little old single me. And it was several beverages into the evening. And suddenly, my friend said that Jews had arranged the assassination attempt on John Paul II. I was so shocked by what my longtime friend had said that I just sucked air in. And then I sounded like a 5-year-old in my response. I said, no, they didn't. Because I didn't know how else to combat it. Honestly, I had no tools to combat it. And then, to my surprise, all 4 people yelled back at me, yes, they did. And then she went and I said, well, NPR says, and she said, NPR is owned by the Jews. And again, I was taken aback. Because actually, I don't know who owns NPR and what their religion is, but I don't think it has anything to do with the lie that is often told that the Jews control the media. This is a lie. It's a lie told to make people fear another group of people. So I said, all I know is that this kind of speech causes violence. And then I left. Well, you may remember that we had the Anti-Defamation League come here about a year to a year and a half ago, and we did a forum about how we can help combat anti-Semitism. And I told her this story, and I said, all I could think of is, no, they don't. How do you fight it? And she said, you ask them, why do you think that? What makes you say that? What makes you say such a thing? Why do you think that? And simply follow the line of thought. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? That is how you slowly stamp out that rising smoke that leads to such violence and such hatred. I did confront that friend again and again at yet another gathering, and similar things were said, and I said, I have a great difficulty with these things you're saying because I think they foster anti-Semitism and lead to violence. And that was the end of our friendship. I don't know whether my friend feels that way still. I wish we were in contact with one another, but I also know that in order for God's justice to happen on the earth, we people who are small and of no account need to use our voices, our truths, and help foster the spiritual truth that everybody is beloved of God, including our Jewish brothers and sisters, that they have a special relationship with God, and that we as Christians have a special role in helping turn this around. It is true that for the most part, we have to hold on when we're looking at big problems in life, at wars that we wish would end, at societal ills that we wish were better, and trust with that faith that we have that God is going to fix it, because God promises every time, and God has delivered century after century, millennia after millennia. But in the meantime, we can be like Zacchaeus. We can say, I see something I can tell the truth about, and I can help turn it around. Amen.